Hello and welcome to this video on why you might choose to go vegan. There are many reasons why people choose to go vegan, such as environmental, health, or antibiotic usage, but this video is going to focus on the ethical reasons to go vegan. The vegan position is a belief that we should not be causing unnecessary harm to animals, and I think it's quite a commonly held moral code. And then if we accept two premises, that animals are conscious beings, that they have their own personalities, desires, and a capacity to feel pain. And also that humans are able to thrive on a plant-based diet. Then the question becomes, how can we justify consuming or using animal products when their production inflicts unnecessary suffering on animals? Vegans don't believe that we can justify it, and therefore to live according to our morals, we choose to live a vegan lifestyle. Let me just give you one supporting point, in case there are any concerns over the viability on human health of eating a plant-based diet. The American Dietetic Association has this to say. It is the position of the American Dietetic Association that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. Well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and for athletes. So you can be sure that the vegan diet is a very healthy one if managed properly. Now, in this video, I'm going to provide some rebuttals to the most commonly mentioned justifications for consuming animal products that I see on internet comment sections. So without further ado, let's get to it. The most common justification I read online is when people say, look, it's my choice to consume animal products. Or maybe they say, I don't tell other people what to do, so people shouldn't be telling me what to do. And the problem with these justifications is that they're not considering the animal in the picture. Whenever we choose to consume animal products, there's a victim there because an animal has suffered in order to produce them. And that's why we can't just justify it as us choosing to do something. In the same way that I couldn't justify choosing to mug someone because it's my choice, that doesn't satisfy it because there's a victim involved. And that same thing applies whenever we choose to consume animal products. Another common reason people give is they say, well, I like the taste. This argument is essentially saying that the enjoyment of consuming animal products justifies it. But I don't think that any amount of pleasure in an activity would justify causing harm or inflicting suffering on another being. I'm sure you can all imagine what the world would be like if people just went around doing what they enjoyed with no regard for other beings. Some people say that it's cultural, or that they have religious beliefs that allow them to consume meat. Well, I don't think that cultural reasons provide a justification for things. Just because people have been doing things doesn't necessarily make them right. There was a time when the slave trade was cultural, but we now know this to be immoral. So we do have to question and justify each of our actions, no matter if our ancestors did them before us. And similarly, for people with religious beliefs that say it's permissible to eat meat, well, it probably doesn't say that you have to consume animal products. You probably are allowed to consume plants as well. So then you're left with the same choice that everyone else is left with, which is, do I eat plants or do I consume animal products which will cause suffering towards the animals? And vegans would say, given that you can eat the plants, we can't justify causing this suffering. sometimes people invoke the food chain, or they say that animals in the wild kill each other. But the food chain no longer applies to the situation that we're in. Ancestral humans, of course, would have needed to eat whatever food they could eat to survive. And similarly, animals in the wild may need to eat other animals to survive. But that's not the situation we find ourselves in. Most of us are fortunate that we can just go to a supermarket and buy an absolute plethora of foods. And we can absolutely choose to just purchase plants instead of animal products. So there's no longer this necessity to eat animals that we used to have. And without this necessity, it's not justifiable to harm them when we can be just as healthy consuming plants. Sometimes people suggest that the fact that we have canine teeth justifies the fact that we eat meat. Well, humans are also adapted to eat plants. So just as in the previous points, we have no need to consume animal products. So therefore we can't justify it. We should just eat plants. And the fact that we have canine teeth doesn't particularly mean much. For example, here's a picture of a silverback gorilla, an animal which is entirely a herbivore. People also like to point out that growing crops will kill animals, and this is unfortunately true. Through the use of pesticides or habitat destruction, some animals will die in the production of our crops. And I do think we should take steps to minimize this and consider how pesticides and things are used. But this argument doesn't justify the consumption of animal products, because if we agree that we should be minimizing our impact upon other animals, well, then we need to realize that consuming animal products has a far greater impact on animals in the wild than eating plants does. You see, animals don't produce energy. They get all the energy that's inside their bodies from eating plants. And because animals move and they lose heat and everything, it's not nearly as efficient to feed plants to an animal and then consume the animal as it is if humans just ate the plants themselves. So what this means is, for each calorie of animal product that we consume, many, many more calories of plant matter could have been eaten by humans. So here's a quote that says, if all the grain currently fed to livestock in the United States were consumed directly by people, the number of people who could be fed would be nearly 800 million. So if we did away with consuming animal products and we just ate plants, then we'd be able to massively reduce the area of arable land we need to sustain the population, and therefore far fewer wild animals or insects would be harmed. People also ask, well, what would a vegan do on a desert island? But this is a very hypothetical question. And instead of thinking what we would do whenever we didn't have easy access to food, we should realize and consider this question, how it applies to us now. And basically, for many, many people, they do have easy access to plant-based foods. And therefore, there's no necessity to consume anything other than plants. And therefore, there's no justification for eating animal products. For the record, if it came down to it, and I needed to eat animal products to survive because I was on a desert island, I probably would. But that knowledge that I might do that doesn't change how I should behave in my current situation, where I have ample access to plants. And lastly, people will often say, well, why do I have to change? Look at this person or that country. People there are doing way more damage than I am. And without even going into whether that's true, and looking at the vast damages that our own lifestyle's doing and comparing it to someone else's, we should realize that other people misbehaving doesn't justify our own misdemeanors. And if we do hold the beliefs that we shouldn't be causing unnecessary harm to animals, then the only thing for it is to give up that harm. So, thank you very much for watching this video. I just want to leave you with a closing thought, and that's that most of the vegans you ever meet weren't born that way. It was a choice we all made. I personally can remember when steak was my favorite food, and I couldn't imagine living without eating animal products. But when I realized that eating animal products was incompatible with my morals, and I started to take the steps to become a vegan, I found it so much easier than I ever would have believed. And I found new delicious foods that I never would have encountered if I just stayed stuck in my own ways.